So I want to talk about journalism in broad form, big strokes, and from a new student's perspective. Despite my inner struggle shared last week in that short film, I am returning to school to pursue a master's degree in journalism. And I know it's not the career path I intended or even kind of envisioned myself doing, but I think with my current skills, with what I hope I learn in journalism school, I think those two match up pretty well together for what I want to do in the future. I hope that makes sense. So I am excited, like when I first heard about the program, I was excited, and it's interesting and like super educational right now to just be scratching the surface into journalism, right? Because I've worked around journalism now for a few years, but I have never been or in my own mind, like a journalist or whatever, working in the media or anything. So it's exciting to kind of go into that role. It's a role I've never actually done before, and I'm super motivated and interested in learning more about it. Journalism is a broad and often subjective topic, and that's what we are going to discuss today, the broad big picture aspects. Definitions and roles. Journalism is defined as the activity or profession of writing for newspapers, magazines, or news websites, or preparing news to be broadcast. It is also defined as the product of the activity of journalism. Example, an art critic whose essays in journalism are never dull. Another definition from Wikipedia, which is extremely interesting, reads, journalism is the unbiased production and distribution of reports on current or past events based on facts and supported with proofs or evidences. Wikipedia also has an interesting side note on that definition, and it's regarding whether journalists are supposed to be objective and or neutral, which is a whole separate side topic. Journalism is said to serve the fourth estate, which is the press and the news media, with the other three historically being the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. Social media's impact on journalism. There is no question that social media has forever altered classical journalism, especially when it comes to major news providers' credibility. Look at the term fake news. It is an example. In reality, fake news isn't anything new, and it's really either disinformation or, when it comes to political topics, just propaganda. The reaction of the largest social media controllers recently has been to restrict the content of those they don't agree with, and that raises major concerns over First Amendment rights and the freedom of the press and the role that social media plays in this new digital realm. The best thing social media has done for journalism integrity is give the viewer an actual choice of official and unofficial outlets. Humanity is now able to get a much more dynamic view of world events than we ever even imagined. It has literally been a game changer. Journalism ethics is another topic that I want to briefly touch on here because it's super confusing. Journalism does not have a universal code of conduct. Journalists are not legally obliged to follow a certain set of rules like other professions, say a doctor or a lawyer. There have been discussions for creating a universal code of conduct in journalism. One suggestion centers on having three claims for credibility, justifiable consequence, and the claim of humanity. Within the claim of credibility, journalists are expected to provide the public with reliable and trustworthy information, and allowing the public to question the nature of the information and its acquisition. The second claim of justifiable consequences centers on weighing the benefits and detriments of a potentially harmful story and acting accordingly. A quick example is exposing a professional with dubious practices. On the other hand, acting within justifiable consequences means writing compassionately about a family that's in mourning. The third claim is the claim of humanity, which states that journalists are writing for a global population and therefore must serve everyone globally in their work, avoiding smaller loyalties to country, city, and etc. So I don't know how I feel about that. It's hard to talk about something from a global perspective if you're from America, or if you're from England, or if you're from Australia, or if you're from China. You're going to tell that story, generally speaking, from a Chinese person's point of view. I mean, you can't help it. I see what they're saying. It's not necessarily wrong, and I think that's probably designed, or the thought is to more protect the journalist so that they can report on stuff going on in their countries without fear of reprimand. I think that's the idea there. There are several forms of journalism out there. I'm just going to hit on a few of them today that are interesting to me, or the most popular forms of what we consider journalism in the West. Wally Dean, the director of training for the Committee of Concerned Journalists, says investigations are a higher level of watchdog journalism. While watchdogs serve as independent monitors of power, he says investigative journalists look into abuses of power. Investigative journalism focuses on deep investigations and research on like a single topic, like serious crimes, political corruption, things like that, right? When I think of investigative journalism, I always think of that podcast Serial, where she just dives in on one topic and spends hours of content on that topic, but she probably spent months, if not a year, of her life on that topic. Photojournalism primarily uses the medium of photography as the main means to tell their story. It is now usually understood to refer only to still images, but in some cases the term also refers to video used in broadcast journalism. So for this one, there's a good example on Instagram called Magnum Photos, where, and Instagram's perfect for photojournalism, right? Like that's like an ideal app for that, because you can put the story there and then you still got enough room underneath it to put the caption. And if it's a great photo, it's going to tell the story, and the text is obviously going to just back it up. So that's a page worth following on Instagram. Broadcast journalism is written or spoken journalism for radio or television. So this one, I mean, just any news station, right? Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, local news, ABC, NBC, all that stuff, right? So that's pretty much any of that is considered broadcast journalism. So I'm excited to embark on this year-long adventure of learning journalism. And I get the arguments, right? Like, you do not need a degree in journalism. You don't. You could just pick up your camera, go out on the streets. There's people that have done it for all the protests and riots and things this year. So you don't need it. But if you're trying to be gainfully employed somewhere, working for a corporation or the government or a newspaper or whatever, then that's definitely going to help. And especially coming from my background, where I don't really know anything about it, I'm an older guy, it's going to be worth it, I think, to me. I don't think I'll regret getting it, if that makes sense. And man, it's exciting, and it's nerve-wracking, right? Because it's like something new and it's way out of my comfort zone. So with that being said, though, I do have a challenge. When you're reading an article or watching a story, try to, just subliminally think, is this investigative journalism? Is it watchdog journalism, photojournalism? What am I, what kind of story is this? And anyway, it's kind of interesting, little thought exercise there. But that's it for today, guys. Take care. Good luck out there. Peace.